All right, I think we can go ahead and get started now. So, welcome everybody, and welcome to our workshop today, the Tech Job Search, our international career panel. It's very exciting to see all of you here today during perhaps the lunch hour, for your breakfast, or even perhaps somewhere late at night. We know that our population consists of everybody around the world today, so wherever you are, thank you so much for tuning in today for our workshop. My name is Andy Ng, and I'm one of your facilitators today for our presentation. And we will be going into our different facilitators in just a little bit, and you'll be able to meet all of our panelists as well. Before we get started, we wanted to mention that this workshop will be recorded, and so we'll be making our slides as well as the recording available on our website later today, so that if you have any colleagues that weren't able to make it to our session, or if you want to review some of the information that we go over today at a later time, absolutely feel free to do so, and we will provide you all with that website link when we can. In addition to that, during the panel today, we invite you to come up with questions that you want to ask our amazing guest panelists. These questions can be shared within the chat box, and if you want as well, feel free to message one of us as well with the question. Our hope is that at the end of towards the end of the panel, that we'll be able to answer as many questions as we can with our panelists. So please feel free to ask questions. If it's a question that we can quickly answer, one of our panelists will be able to do so in the chat box. But if it's something that requires, a little bit more discussion, of course, then we'll make some time for that as well. So for our agenda today, we're going to start with a couple more welcomes of us as the facilitators. We'll be going over some of the challenges that you may be considering when you're thinking about what this job search looks like for you all in the future. We know that in the room right now, we have a mix of both graduate students that are domestic and international. We have some undergrad students as well. We have staff members. So we know that there's different challenges and there's different things to think about when you're going into the job search. And so we're gonna cover a little bit of that. We're gonna talk a little bit about work authorization as well, to make sure that beyond graduation, what options look like for a lot of our international graduates and how you can stay working here in the US. And of course, we'll be going to our main chunk of our workshop today, which is going to be our recruiter slash alumni panel. And we have some amazing guests for you today who speak about their experiences, as well as a little wrap up towards the end. And so again, to reintroduce myself, my name is Andy Ng. I use he, him, his as my preferred pronouns. I'm one of the global programming coordinators as part of global programming, which is a unit of global engagement. And so I say thank you again so much for attending our workshop today and for joining us, really. And so I'll be passing this along to my colleague, Vanessa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vanessa Ori, and I work as an international student and scholar advisor as part of the ISSS office, which is also part of the Division of Global Engagement. I'll be one of the co-hosts for today's event, and my main role that you'll see me in otherwise is advising international F1 and J1 students, often talking about work authorization. So that's kind of the angle I'm coming at with today's presentation. And I really appreciate you being here. Passing it on to Yang.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hey, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Yang. I am the International Career Coach with CareerXSS. So one of my main responsibilities is that I work very closely with global programming or global engagement. Again, very excited to be part of the team today.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you, Yang. And we will get to our panelists in just a little bit. So before we dive into that, we want to go over again a couple of challenges to consider as you embark on your job search. So whether you're a first-year graduate student or you're in your last year of your PhD program, we know that looking at jobs in the future is one of your main priorities right now. And in particular, the tech industry is a very different ballgame when we're thinking about types of different job searches. So we wanted to go over a couple of intercultural challenges that for a lot of our international students, they may encounter in your job search. Now, we use the word challenges, not to necessarily say that these are the hardest parts of the job search or that it's the end all be all necessarily. And we don't want this to become off as necessarily barriers either for our students, but more so, these are just different factors we want you all to consider that you may already be thinking about, but not necessarily thinking about it right away immediately when you're working on resumes and getting those interviews. These are things that we unconsciously think about as individuals when we're considering what that job search looks like. So we wanted to go over a couple of things with you today. So firstly, you might be feeling a little bit about what the American job search etiquette looks like. When, for a lot of you, when you first registered for this presentation, you were sharing a little bit about some of your concerns about what that job search looks like. And for a couple of you, you're talking about the American standpoint of looking for jobs in general. How exactly do you go about job searching here in the States in terms of what that etiquette looks like? So what does that entail? Mannerisms, perhaps. When you're talking to a recruiter or an employer, thinking about what that Western sense of recruitment looks like versus what you may experience back in your home countries. There's things about body language and how we're communicating. And for a lot of our international students, we often hear that issue of, if English is not my first language, will that put me at a disadvantage necessarily? Or the way that I was raised and some of my own personal beliefs, how does that relate to the work that I will end up doing with this company or with this job and position? So we know that there's a lot of those things that you all may be thinking about, and we wanted to be able to honor and acknowledge that today as part of our presentation. We also wanted to talk a little bit about some of that self-awareness of your own personal culture. And so what we mean by that is, as individuals, we all hold our own values, beliefs, and different attitudes on how we conduct ourselves and how we choose to present ourselves. Within the job search world, we're presenting ourselves in a very professional mean, right? And so we oftentimes have to think about how we're presenting ourselves and how we were raised and what we're used to, and how that may come off to the employer or to a colleague, a future colleague, for example, and how they may intersect in your prospects of getting that position that you're applying for. So we oftentimes want our students to be able to really understand their own personal culture, to think about, where they were raised, and perhaps, for example, if you were raised in a society that is a little more collectivist versus one here in the US where there is more of an emphasis on the individual, for example, there may be a difference in how we're approaching the work that we're doing. And so that may impact how you answer your questions in interviews. So there's just a couple of things I want you all to think about that may not be at the forefront, but will certainly affect your prospects. And I think will also give you an advantage in how you present yourself to employers, to recruiters that assist you in getting those jobs. So with that said, I wanted to pass it over to Yang to go a little bit over about what other thoughts and feelings you may have about the job search.
For sure. Thank you, Andy. So we wanted to touch a little bit more, about your thoughts and feelings regarding the job search process, right? For some of you, as everyone here can understand, we are in the midst of, seeing COVID-19 cases on the rise on a daily basis now, and we just want to acknowledge that for many of us, it is a scary time. It can be overwhelming, and everyone is concerned about their health and safety, and it's totally okay to have these feelings. And at times, it may feel as if you're going through this alone, right? But keep in mind, you're not alone, right? You're not alone in this. So use this time to learn about the rapidly changing employment market to your advantage. Think in terms of what skills have I developed over the course of my study, that could be transferable to a related industry, or perhaps even another industry that you have not considered before. And this is the time to be strategic, create backup plans for your job search. And to our third point, just remember that regardless of your status, whether you are a domestic or international candidate or student, each of you has a unique set of skills, experiences, advantages that you can offer to potential employers. And in particular, our international students, your intercultural experience, right, and the diversity that you can bring to any team, it's COVID-19 proof. It's timeless. So keep that in mind. Um, some of you have expressed concerns about the transition from academic to industry. Well, you're in the right place to engage in this conversation. All of our panelists are UCSC graduates, and we hope that in this webinar, you will get to hear a little bit about how our panelists transition from their academic journey to their industry. Finally, some of you have questions related to work authorization and OPT. So we'd like to take a little bit of time to address this very important topic. And I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa to continue this conversation.
Thank you. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I'm coming from the ISSS office as an international student and scholar advisor. And that means that my main job is to help international students make sure they are able to maintain their visa status properly, which includes conversations around work authorization. I primarily work with F1 visa holders, and the work authorization related to F1 visa status is CPT, OPT, or STEM OPT extension. So CPT stands for Curricular Practical Training. This is work that takes place off campus and is directly related to the student's field of study, and this takes place prior to graduation. And this work authorization is authorized by our office in-house. When we send out these slides, you can click on the hyperlinks. We have this information on our website with all the details on how to apply for CPT. In addition, many students apply for OPT, optional practical training, and possibly STEM OPT extension, which is a second opportunity to have OPT work authorization for STEM majors, which is probably many students in this room. OPT and STEM OPT also must be directly related to the student's field of study, and they take place off campus. These authorizations take place after a student graduates from their program, and the authorization is granted by USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. So it's granted by the government. Processing time takes a while. There's a lot to say about OPT and STEM OPT. We actually offer workshops about OPT to provide really the details on this. So feel free to check in with us in ISSS for more details. But that's the basics of F1 work authorization options. I also wanted to mention other temporary work visas, such as H-1B, which relates to specialty occupations. Basically, it's for highly skilled workers who have advanced degrees in specialty occupations. And then also an O-1 visa, which is for individuals with extraordinary ability or achievement. So basically people who stand out in particular fields. It could be extraordinary ability in the sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics, or for people who have demonstrated extraordinary achievement in the motion picture or the television industry. Both of these work authorizations are granted for up to 3 years. The sponsorship is initiated by the person's company, their employer, and the authorization comes from the government, from USCIS. I wanted to put these items, these terms out there as a basic context because you will likely hear them said a bit from our alumni panelists, possibly from the recruiter panelists as well. So again, reach out to ISSS with questions about how to get these authorizations, but I just wanted to give at least some context so you can understand some of the answers that may come in the panel. So with that, I would like to move on to introducing our student alumni panelists. As we mentioned before, these are all former UCSC students who have graduated and are now working in different industries in the field. Work authorization varies, visa status varies a bit. But I would like to go ahead and pass it on to our student alumni panelists to introduce yourselves, starting with Anton.
Hello. I'm ready to, UC Santa Cruz. I work in movie industry. Company is called The Third Floor. I started off as a game developer, so I hope that, I can maybe help you navigate a little bit with those questions you will have very soon as you enter the market. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. And Bhumika?
Hi, my name is Bhumika. I also graduated from UCSC with the MS in Computer Science in 2018. Right now, I'm a software developer with Tableau software, which is part of the Salesforce organization as of last year. Tableau, for those of you who don't know, is mainly a data visualization software for data science analysts and business analysts. I work in the office of the CTO in the data science and engineering team in the research unit.
Cool, thank you. And Zichang?
Hi everyone, my name is Zichang, and I was a graduate student in the UCSC, and I graduated in 2018. And after that, I work as a software engineer. And so I'm really happy to meet Aaron here. So feel free to ask me like anything that you're interested in. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you all again so much for your time. I know you are happy to think about your former times as students here, but now you're busy with full-time jobs, so we really appreciate you sharing your perspectives with current students today. And passing it on to Yang to start the introductions for our other panelists.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. All right, so our recruiter panelists, at a glance, we have Dorothea, Tia, who goes by Tia Vera, and Karen Zeller. So I'm going to pass over to you, recruiters. Go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll start with Tia.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Tia, and currently I'm working as a talent and diversity program manager for a startup that's based in Redwood City, so not too far from Santa Cruz. I actually graduated Santa Cruz a while ago with my bachelor's in anthropology, also studied abroad, so also have that intercultural perspective. So I'm definitely excited to connect, answer questions, give guidance on how to navigate the job market.
Thank you, Tia. Karen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen. I don't know if you can see me. I can't see myself. I am a recent grad. I graduated in 2019, and now I'm working at Amazon. Unfortunately, I don't hire students. I typically hire mid-career professionals, but I've hired both tech and non-tech. And I also want to note that I'm representing myself. All opinions are my own, but hopefully I can help provide some insight.
Thank you for that, Karen. Yeah, I'm sure your insight will be valuable to our students. All right, so with that, I think we're ready for our next slide. Andy. Okay, so our first set of questions. Before we get started into the questions, just a quick note regarding the format. So we have 3 different themes, and our first themes, as you can see, it's going to be on seeking positions. So we'll have the recruiter panelists go first, and then we'll turn it over to our alumni panelists. So recruiters, these are your questions. How can students make themselves more marketable to help them in their networking and job searching? Anybody can take a stab at this question. Karen, and
yeah, I can go first. I would say the most important thing you can do before you're applying to jobs or while you're applying to jobs is just getting involved. I know it's a little bit different right now with everyone working or doing school remotely. But if you can join like a club, if you can do a job on campus or virtually through campus, if you can do a project, anything that you can put on your resume that you did outside of school is really helpful. I think when someone puts, just what they did in school, it leaves a lot out of what they could be providing. So definitely try to get involved before you or while you're job searching.
Yeah,
you.
and I definitely agree with that. Showing, you know, the potential impact that you could have on a future employer's business is definitely something to make sure that you're representing in your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, and that goes beyond just kind of the keywords that you want to include. A lot of times, recruiters will search for profiles based off of keywords that are affiliated with the job description. So I always recommend making sure that your LinkedIn profile and your resume have those keywords in a certain block or, you know, within the actual description. And then I would definitely say, you know, I think getting involved in helping organize, you know, anything that is also related to your field. So again, like what Karen said, maybe helping organize particular job fairs that are focused on specific areas of your interest, of that nature. And then also just networking with people who are working in the space that you want to go into. So networking is kind of one of those words that's kind of scary and nebulous, but I would definitely say it's all about just building relationships. So if you're going to reach out to someone, you know, have, you know, a set of questions, get to know about them and their background, and also, you know, just kind of keep that loop going. So don't just come at them with an ask, you know, build that personal relationship with the person first.
You're nice. Thank you, you too. So we're gonna go to our next questions, our alumni panelists. Our questions are, tell us about your job search experience. Did you attend career fairs, networking events? What tips do you have for our attendees? Anybody can take a stab at this.
I can start it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We definitely. I was lucky to study in the extension, which is in in Silicon Valley. So I kind of had the luxury of like attending different tech events, different companies, and making friends there. And it actually got me a job once I graduated. However, there's this thing that I guess it's a psychological barrier probably for recruiters, the 1-year experience. And my first like job search, I guess, experience was pretty like unfruitful in terms of, I think I submitted maybe like around, I think 150 maybe applications to different companies, and like I almost had to beg for an interview. But once I hit this 1 year of experience, even on LinkedIn, I started getting more like connections from different recruiters trying to asking me if I'm open for opportunities. So this thing is important, I think, and also as someone mentioned before, the having nice like resume with the stuff you did helped me a lot, I think, in terms of the projects that you work on at university. Make sure they are in a presentable shape, and you can talk about what you did there, how you contributed. Yeah, like show basically how you can be useful to the company. I think that's it.
Thank you. Antoine, Bhumika or Jichuan?
Yeah, I can go next. I kind of resonate a lot with that too. Like it gets better the second time round, because this is my second job after graduating too. And the first time I did the same thing, like bulk application, sending out lots of resumes, and just like even like that apply now button on LinkedIn without even like tailoring resumes or anything. But what I did learn from that experience was this, that second time around, I put quality over quantity. Like I actually tailored my resume to the job I was applying to. I researched the company beforehand and even the job duties and the teams, so that I know beforehand if my interests kind of align with what the team is doing, and then just the culture of the company, and if I had specific projects and interests that the team kind of aligned with that I was applying to. Knowing those things beforehand kind of helps you through the process, and also helps you decide whether you want to take the job, like when you actually get to that position. I also personally did not attend that many events, which is one thing I wish I did. Because now, like when my company is hiring, we actually do really pick candidates from like events. If they show interest, if they talk about like what they're interested in, if they want to learn about our company, we kind of give preference to those students even. Like it's mostly master's and PhD because I work in research, but we do a lot of hiring from events. So attending and just being curious and like ready to learn is also like a big advantage, even though you don't have any like experience in the industry. So yeah, those are like two things that I think I did better the second time around.
Thank you, Bhumika.
Yeah, I think I can go next. Yeah, so I agree with the other two panelists. So yeah, so also for me, this job is also my second job after I graduated from UCSC. So I would say that the student hire procedure and the professional hire procedure is kind of different, but the starting point to get the resources of job searching is kind of similar. So I would say that for most of the big companies, I think they have their own job searching website. So it's really good to pay attention to those websites, and they have so during the time of a year, so they have like specific months they will post a lot of new jobs. So it is good time for you to find the job ID that suits your best, and then use your connections you build to maybe get a reference, and then that is a good time to start, and that is a good point to start. So about career fairs, I personally did attend some career fairs, but although I didn't get my job from career fair, but I do know there's a lot of my friends, they got their job from the UCSC career fairs in 2018. So I would say that is a really good opportunity to go there, and especially at the year when you are going to graduate. But also it's good for you to find an internship. Yeah. So yeah, so regarding the networking events, I would say maybe maybe my understanding for the networking events is about like how the company organizes those events. So my personal experience is like, I know Microsoft have hiring events here. So the way they do is the recruiters online, they will find the people and they send a link to you, and you go and register for that. Then you can attend the hiring events, and they will, do some like interview procedure during that event. So maybe some company have that kind of events. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, so I think that's I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhichuan. Yeah, so as you guys were talking, I have some notes there. So definitely join a club, right? Do projects, and put those experiences on your resume, right? Network with people who are already in the space that you want to go into. Definitely attend career events. Sending out bulk resume might not be the best idea, right? So tailor those resume, having polished resume, and I think Bhumika, you raise a really important point: quality over quantity. That's very nice. So thank you again, panelists. We're gonna move on to our next slide.
Great, and I'll be asking these questions. Moving on to the next theme of our questions. So that was all about seeking the position. How do you find the right position? Now imagine it's time to apply. So you're tailoring your resume, which we've touched on a little bit, and that you're hopefully landing an interview. So any kind of all in that context advice, starting with the recruiters, what skill sets or traits do you look for in applicants who have just graduated? Do you have any specific advice for international applicants in the context of resume or interviews?
Yeah, I can go first. I would say, even though I don't hire students, I've hired some folks who were earlier in career. And the two things that I was really looking for, one was just their curiosity and how much they want to learn. Often as a student, you're not doing exactly the same type of work that you're going to be doing in the industry. So you want to show that you're really interested in learning about it, whether that's doing like a Coursera course about the specific topic that you're interested in, or whether that's doing a certification or doing a project on your own. Anything that you do outside of class will really show that you're interested in it, and that'll make the company, really interested in you because you're interested in what they're doing. And then the other thing is we want to see your impact. So I think Tia mentioned this, is being able to say, I led a team project of 10 people. rather than just saying, I worked on this project and that's it. Being able to say, I led team meetings of 10 people, I did this, because we want to see that you'll have an impact at the company. So impact and then curiosity and wanting to learn are the two things that I would look for.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. So I would definitely recommend, sorry, backtrack. So I always look for people who exhibit a growth mindset and people who have showed past experiences of learning from past mistakes. So having that accountability and vulnerability to say, you know, yes, this project maybe didn't work out as I planned, but I learned all of this, and then here's how I applied that learning in a future application. So that is definitely something I would recommend, you know, to have some examples of for when you do get into that interview process. And then also I would recommend looking up the company's values, which should be on their website. A lot of times the recruiting process is built out to directly map previous experiences to the company values to make sure that everybody who ends up on that team embodies those values to a certain extent. So like I just mentioned, growth and accountability, those are two really big ones that we look for at my company for you know, more junior level positions. And then I would also recommend just asking about the expectations of the interview before actually going into the interview, so that you are prepared to have examples ready, or you know, just have a heads up on who's going to be involved, what their position is within the company as well, because then that will help you triangulate, okay, this person maybe is focused on this particular project and I would be collaborating with them in this position. So starting to kind of build out your sense and your knowledge of, this is the team I would be working in, and that will basically help you say, this is how I can add value to your team if you know the specifics. And then also for international students, sorry, I just read the last question. I would also say be upfront with your status with your recruiter from the very beginning. A lot of companies like earlier stage startups just don't have the right people in place, the bandwidth to support people who are on visas. So I would definitely make sure before you start investing a lot of time in those conversations, just make sure, hey, do you support, you know, F1 OPT STEM extensions or something like that.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. Really great. I was also taking some notes. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Moving on to our student alumni panelists, also in the context of resumes and interviews. I'll ask you the first question, see if you all can answer, and then we can move on to the second bullet point there. Just thinking about the first question, a couple questions here. How did you approach your resumes? Did you tailor your resumes for each position? What resources did you use to update and strengthen your resumes? Any student alumni panelist can start, whoever would like to begin.
Can I begin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something Bhumika mentioned, right? About the you know, quality over quantity. That is a really good approach. But also, I didn't really know what it was supposed to be like, the resume. You know, like what is the measure of quality for it? So I think I was applying, like I was changing it kind of constantly and seeing how recruiters react to these changes and see what works better, what gets, you know, more attention. So that's an ongoing process. Definitely look through the market, like, you know, use all these Indeed and LinkedIn and all that, all the websites you can probably, and try to like monitor them every week or so. And so because I think this is what perfects your resume, is actually applying and seeing how it does. Oh yeah, E-Verify. I think this is a thing, as Tia mentioned, the E-Verify, I think, is something that company has to use to employ OPT students. So we had this case in my class when a person went through a whole interview process and then they mentioned that, hey, I'm on OPT, and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't hire OPT students. So yeah, that should be considered upfront.
Just to add to that, it's required for students on STEM OPT extension. It's not technically required for people on post-completion OPT, but if you're on post-completion OPT and you're on the trajectory of eventually having a STEM OPT with that same employer, it would be something important to communicate with your employer and at least be aware of that so you can have the long-term vision or not. But go on if you had anything else to add to that.
Oh no, I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks.
And our other panelists, anything about resumes?
I can go next. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a bit of live and learn for sure, and resumes kind of depend on like kind of what jobs you're applying for. For me personally, I do like to do LaTeX because for typesetting, and it looks nicer and shows a little bit more effort, I guess. And then just for me, it's like experience and skills and projects, and then extracurriculars and education. I like to keep it like really simple and easier to read, rather than making it sound really fancy. For projects, in my job descriptions, I think a lot of people follow this, like it's called like a STAR approach, but I keep the TAR of that, like task, action, and then result. Like, what was your project? How did you approach it? And what was the outcome? And like someone already mentioned that numbers and stats matter, like growth and impact that your project or work made, like including those things, like maybe like having actual numbers associated with that really stands out sometimes. And then about tailoring, yeah, that's kind of like hit and trial. Like you have to see like what actually works with what kind of jobs. But personally for me, most of the interviews that I did, they did ask me about projects. It was almost always the first project that I had listed on. So we always end up talking in detail about the first one. So making sure that that one's like relevant and really resonates with the job you're applying to helps sometimes. And then Git is really important. Having a Git to showcase and adding it on top of your resume is really important, especially for software engineering interviews. I just learned about like GitLab Pages, which I think is interesting. That kind of helps you make your project look more interesting, and like it's a better UI for descriptions for your projects. And then having like an updated LinkedIn for sure, and linking that on there too. Yeah, those are some things that I think makes like your resume a little bit stronger.
Great, thank you. And Zuchong, any advice on resumes?
Yeah, I can go next. I think the other panelists provided really good information, and I agree with that. For me, I think the starting point for me to approach my resume, I actually start with reading other people's resume, because when I want to like create resume for myself, I have no idea like in my mind what should I write and how should I organize the structure of the resume. And maybe the biggest question for me at that time was how to organize the structure. So yeah, so I read like a few resumes, which is provided by the people who already got their job, and I read into that and see, okay, this is a structure like of the resume that you can get you a job. And then I put my personal like information and content experience on that. And yeah, so that is my first resume where I got. Regarding tailor the resume for each position, I would say definitely yes, because as a student hire, you're not like suitable only for one position. You may be suitable for multiple positions, and you may have like attend different courses, have different projects, and some of them may suit one position, but some of them may not. So actually, when I was doing interview, I do mostly on the position of like software engineer, but I know a roommate who was living with me together, and he interviewed for both data science, data engineer and software engineer. So those two positions are kind of like different. So the project he put into the resume and the order of the projects is kind of like different, and he just emphasized on different part. Yeah. So I would say like maybe the top one and first one, like the people reading the resume have like better impression on that, and just put the one relevant to that position on the top. Yeah. So another one, I would say after you have your like first version of the resume, And it's really a good option to, I would say, to interact or interchange with your peers and just exchange some information on how you organize your resume and how I did that. Just exchange for some more ideas and thoughts from different people. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Sorry, I just wanted to double down and provide a little extra context kind of on the back end. Since everyone is talking about tailoring resumes, I definitely agree with that. I think if you can kind of mirror the language that is being used in the responsibility section of the job description when you are applying to a certain position, it really helps the recruiter kind of make the connection between your resume and what they're looking for. Recruiters also look at a lot of resumes every day, so that will also help you stand out. And then I would also recommend putting together a cover letter explaining why you want to be at that company. A lot of people kind of don't think about cover letters as being super important, but it definitely helps you stand out, especially if it's customized and it says, you know, this is how I want to grow at this particular company. That will really stand out.
Cool. And thank you so much for jumping in. It's really good to have both angles of people, you know, the applicants and then the people who are reading these resumes. So I appreciate that.
I would also like to double down on that, that I got my first job because of my cover letter. Like my manager later told me that we liked your cover letter and that's why we called you. So that is really important.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that too, even if they're not required, you know, sometimes just because they're not required, people will skip them. And then the people who end up providing it as an optional document stand out because, you know, they're going that extra mile to explain why they're qualified and why they're interested. And moving on to the last couple questions in this theme, recruiters feel free to jump in as well. But for the students, how did you prepare for your job interviews? What were your interviews like? What tips do you have for interviews? And similar to the recruiters, any tips you have about interviewing? Anybody can start.
I'll start again. Just
Sure, go ahead.
Just to remember the order.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely for the interviews, it's good if you're like following your passion. I don't want it to sound cliche, it does though, but it really should help you write the cover letter. But basically you have to feel the way like, okay, I know that your company does this, worked on that, and this excites me. I worked on similar projects while I was at school or maybe in my free time, whatever. Here's my GitHub. You can check out this project that, you know, I think is kind of like what you do at your company, and I really want to do this. Something like that, if you demonstrate it, it helps a lot. And then during the interview, usually you'll be kind of asked questions about the work you did, blah, 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 on that project. So that all helps. There's also another thing we did with my classmates, since we were all looking for jobs kind of simultaneously, we were getting interviews, and then we would set up like mock interviews where we would ask each other questions that we heard at the interviews without revealing the name of the company who asked it, because, you know, it's kind of against the etiquette. But yeah, we would have these mock interviews. They were really helpful, kind of helped us to de-stress, because once you start doing the interviews, it's a lot of stress, and you shouldn't get overwhelmed, but definitely at first you're likely to bomb an interview or something. Don't worry about it too much. I think this is the place where you have to go through a certain number of them. Yeah, that's probably it. The only thing I have wanted to mention is that's something Yang is probably going to talk about more, but you know, taking care of your mental health, because that is probably the big, like, stressful part of the deal. So make sure you have, you know, you socialize, you de-stress somehow, maybe you do sports or something. I think all this is important as well. Thanks.
So I'll go next. Yeah, I mean, for software engineering interviews, Honestly, like 70 to 80% of it is mostly problem solving. You will do like a lot of like code pairing interviews, and it mostly is, I think the main focus usually is just practicing and your algorithms and data structures and just being really quick with it. A lot of those things, like having like enough practice done like before you start interviewing, and like maybe mock interviews and stuff. I think firsthand is really good with UCSC. I've done some mock interviews there, so I've enjoyed doing that too. And then and yeah, the same thing with like bombing, when you sometimes, like I did this personally, like I couldn't like talk very fluently about my own personal projects, like my first couple of interviews. So just fleshing that out beforehand, having like an elevator pitch, like having a talking points for all the projects you've done in the past, because you tend to, I forget, people tend to forget. So just having that fleshed out like way beforehand, even though like you know the project very well, but sometimes just like the pressure, you can't really talk about it. But yeah, I think mostly for software engineering, it is problem solving and just getting enough practice done for that, solving questions with friends. That's what we used to do too, like just asking people algorithm questions and making them solve them on a piece of paper, whiteboard. And just like it took us a few months of practicing that before we started doing like mocks and then the actual interviews. I think that's the main part, really. I think that's it.
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah, so I agree that like the interview for a software engineer job is pretty, how to say, it's like a routine. So it's pretty like a fixed structure. So yeah. So in terms of like the problem solving, I think they will go start maybe from like algorithm problems, and then ask you some experience on your project, and then maybe ask you to like mock design like a small system. And then maybe after that, finally, there will be some like behavioral questions. So yeah, it's pretty like a fixed structure. And I would say one tip I want to bring up is that because it's considered of like different parts, so I would say different people may have different strengths in different parts. So for me personally, I'm not very talented in the algorithm part, but I think when I do the whiteboarding, system designing, I did better than the algorithm part. So if I had a chance to do some like whiteboarding and just demonstrate a system I design and demonstrate the experience I have, I would really do a good job, because I know this is my strength part and I want to show it. Yeah. So yeah. So maybe like for you guys, like you may have like different strengths. So just show that in your interview. Yeah. And another thing I want to bring up is about how to prepare. I would say if you have like a few peers that are looking for a job together, why not just you guys do some mock interview? That's really it's really a good opportunity to practice the how you respond to the problem, how you respond to questions, and how you organize your mental health. Maybe like just don't be nervous like when you're going to the real interviews. Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, I have something to add really quickly.
Please.
I would say just dress the part too. I know it's a little bit weird with everyone on Zoom and probably virtual interviews, but I think something that helped me be more confident is not only, trying to practice interview questions, but also trying to prepare in a way that I felt like I looked the part, I looked like a professional. So whatever that means for you to be comfortable, whether that's putting on a nice shirt, I think it's helpful to set up your kind of desk station if you have one, like get some water, have a piece of paper so you can take notes and things like that. Since there's a lot of things you can do before the interview to prepare and make sure you're all set up. And then I would also say you should definitely prepare some questions in advance. I think in your first couple of interviews, you may be a little bit flustered, and when they ask if you have any questions, you're like, no, I think you answered everything. But for recruiters, we want to see that you're really curious and you really want to know as much about the company as you can. So I would say have at least 3 questions prepared in advance.
Yeah, definitely doubling down on the questions piece. We recruiters really like to see that you are envisioning yourself in that particular position. And a lot of times, especially as you go further into the process, you're going to be interviewing with people who are going to be your direct managers or people that you're going to be collaborating with really closely. So it's also a really good opportunity for you to get a really good sense of what is my day-to-day life going to be like on this team. So questions is a huge part of understanding, how you would fit into that larger puzzle. And I think I mentioned this before, but another big piece of advice that I give is just understanding the expectation of that interview before you go in. Some companies will provide context, when they send out a calendar invite or actually invite you to that interview, and some companies won't. So definitely, have a good understanding of what's going to be covered so that you can prepare.
Great. Thank you so much. I really love all of these answers, and it's helpful for everybody in the room really to get some of these reminders and new insights. So thank you. And we can move on to our next little theme of questions.
Absolutely. And thank you, Vanessa, for that, because I'm also learning a lot through this process as well. So thank you so much for our panelists today. And so for our last theme, we wanted to do a little bit of self-reflecting then and now, and thinking about when we first started in our positions and where we are now, in this present time. And also thinking about how our identities, because as for all of us, really, we're all slugs in one way or another. But for a lot of our international students, what does that look like, and how does that play into this role of job searching as well as working here in the US? So to get started, for our recruiters, in reflecting upon your experiences recruiting, what other words of advice can you share with new applicants, and in particular those that are in our international community?
I can go first. I would say one of the things that I learned the most, from my job process and then working in the industry now, is you should just really take advantage of the resources that are available to you as students specifically. So for example, a lot of companies will have a specific student programs recruiting organization, but a lot of students don't realize that. And so they'll apply to any job within the company, even if it requires like 10 years of experience. So being able to really hone in on, those kind of jobs, they're specifically looking for students. For example, if you use Handshake, which I know is put on by the Career Center, those are companies that really want students specifically. And also utilize the Career Advice Network is another great resource for UCSC alumni. I didn't really know about it when I was a student, but there's a bunch of alumni who really want to be involved and provide career advice. But not as many students use it as could use it. So I definitely recommend, having some questions in mind and being able to utilize that resource too.
Yeah, I would definitely say, jumping in on those resources is immensely helpful. So definitely take advantage of them. And I would also say that your perspective really matters. There's a lot of business cases that show that diverse teams are more profitable and more successful over time. So, your unique perspective, especially as international students, is wanted by companies. So be sure that, you are asking those companies that you're interviewing at about their diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. Because that's also really going to set you up for success once you do get in the door. Because you want people who are being trained or educated by the company around, how do I be a good mentor to someone who has a different background than myself? And then also, thinking about how your growth perspectives look within that company as well. And then also, it's a weird year. It's a really weird job market. So don't get discouraged. I think we have given you a lot of really great advice. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of applications. It's going to take a lot of interviews. All of that is just practice so that when the right opportunity does come, you're going to be able to nail it. So, and I'm also happy to review any resumes as well. I think you can get my contact info from the folks who are putting on this awesome workshop. So I'm always happy to do that for students. Just reach out.
That is awesome. Thank you so very much. All right. And then going into our alumni panel, so we have two sets of questions again that are interrelated to your identities as international students, as international employees here in the US. So we'll start with the first part first, and then we'll dive into the second one. So as an international worker, employee at your companies now, what challenges did you overcome in this job search? And overall, what feelings or sentiments did you experience that you can also touch upon with our students today?
I can speak a little bit about this. First, I guess. Yeah, as international worker, it's obviously harder with on the parts of documents pretty much because it's easier. It's way easier to hire someone, for example, who's not an OPT. Like it's always easier for a company to hire a, say American citizen. But at the same time, I think in a lot of cases, me and people from the company that I see, they show a lot of like passion, I guess, about what they do. Maybe this is maybe it's only relevant to my industry because I work in movies, so people have actual like feelings towards what they do, and I think that a lot of international workers, they come with this like, I've been watching these movies since childhood and I want to work in them so much. And obviously it might have to do just with the fact like how people rush towards it. So it's not necessarily related to your international status, I guess. But at the same time, I think that in our company, at least, like we get the best artists from all over the world, and it is quite amazing. I met a lot of awesome people from different places there in the company who contribute really well because they all bring their unique kind of styles that I don't think would be forged elsewhere. And yeah, I think I'm grateful that I'm among so many people from all over the world, absolutely diverse backgrounds. There's like, yeah, it's a crazy mix and it's beautiful. Thanks.
I can go next. For me, it was mostly like the biggest hurdle obviously is the fact that we need sponsorship, and like the whole paperwork aspect of it is kind of like scary in the beginning. I personally had a lot of hesitation and discomfort around asking about visa sponsorship and being upfront before I started interviewing, and I'm learning to do that better now. But it's always helpful to like ask about like first if they will sponsor you, and then also there are other things like having a supportive manager really matters. Like on my H-1B, I got an RFE and they had to do a lot of paperwork associated with it, so just having someone who understands that in your team or as your manager or the HR team or whatever, just talking about that beforehand, that you will need this kind of support, is always helpful. It kind of like helps with the anxiety later on if you have a supporting team. A lot of the media, and I think someone already talked a little bit about this, but a lot of the big medium-sized companies are upfront themselves about sponsorship. Like the first HR call, they will mention if you need it, like we will sponsor you or we will not. But a lot of startups actually do not have the bandwidth to do it. My first company was a startup and they did not have the bandwidth to do it, and I did not talk about it in the beginning, but my manager was nicer and they outsourced a lawyer later on to help me with it, but it was specifically for me, so it was a little bit more effort than bigger companies who have like a method in place already. So just having talked about that like in advance kind of helps with all of that anxiety. And then also not thinking too much into the future. Like for me, even before I started like my job hunt, I was thinking about OPT and then STEM OPT, and then what would be like for an H-1B and what would be like on a perm application, like how much paperwork will I have to do like in the future. I still think about that a lot, but just not worrying about like too much into the future and just focusing on what you have right now is important too. But yeah, I think those are the biggest things that internationals face. I think just the amount of paperwork we have to do. So yeah, that's what I try to focus on. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Yeah, I think I can go next maybe. So yes, definitely as an international worker, so when you're doing a job search, I would say that we really do have like limited resources compared to like in the home country. Because like when you're trying to like find some like reference, when you're trying to get some advice, there's limited people that you can reach out. And that is the first challenge to do that. And but I would say that's also an opportunity for you to like build up some new network and new relations like on and in this side. And another thing I want to mention about is because we are like the international worker and we have like visa restrictions. So for some people, there might be like limited time of like unemployment date. And yeah, I know like for citizens and the permanent residents, they don't have this problem. So yeah, so if there's like a break in our like career or after we graduate, we haven't found like a solid job, there might be some like anxiety in here. But I would say that it is not the end of the world. And I do know like a lot of people like really well that we connect like a lot, and they use their like employment time and finally they got a job. And most of them got a job. I would say that just maybe like only 1 out of 10 doesn't got that. So I would say that just like hang in there. And although you have a lot of restrictions, but still a lot of opportunity in here. Yeah, that's for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think it's just really inspirational to really hear all of your stories about how challenging it was at the very beginning, and through persistence and just working really hard and continuing to acknowledge those challenges, you're at where you are now in your current career. So just kudos to all of you as well for just, in recognizing the hard work that you've done so far. So, in moving to our last question that we have today, is there anything else that you could share with us about how your identity as an international, worker, employee, how that has impacted your job, your relationships with coworkers, with your managers, and your overall experiences in general? Do you think about your identity as an international worker in your day-to-day work and life? And anything else that you like to share?
I'll start if it's okay. But yeah, I think that this is a very interesting place to work at, because I mean, you asked in general. Here in the US, at least, I got this opportunity to like work with people from all over the world, as I said, and this probably is not possible elsewhere. Like very few countries are this much, international. At least companies better to say. The tech field is very international. The movies are very international too, and I think that this is a great experience. Definitely appreciate it when you have a chance to spend time, like meet people. Especially I think it's cool to like communicate with the people with whom it's hardest to communicate. Like everybody has their, again, because of the backgrounds, like the accents, a lot of people also are not, especially in tech field, a lot of people are not as good at communicating, maybe language, maybe for other reasons, but maybe where like a lot of us are just like not very social, I guess. But at the same time, this really teaches you so much about how to approach people in all around the world, pretty much. So who knows where you'll be in a year or two, maybe somewhere else, right? So that is, I think, great part about identity of international worker. And I think, because my company is that much different, I think our managers, HRs, they are very really understanding. I think it helps them to be able to talk to anybody and like maintain this line of communication with people from absolutely different backgrounds. So yeah, that's it.
I can go next. Um, in terms of like job, like in relationships with like people at work, I feel like I've been very lucky. I've had really good coworkers. At least my company, that it's very diverse. Like with people from all parts of the world. Everyone's very welcoming. So I don't think that that's a hurdle, like of any sort, that I'm from a different country. The only thing that I personally do is like I'm a little bit harder on myself because I feel like I'm on a company sponsored visa, but like in terms of work and everything, like tend to overwork myself a little bit. But my manager is really nice and supportive, so she always tells me to take a break. But I think people are actually really way more welcoming than I would was expecting when I first like left my country and came here. So, and the companies are really, really diverse. Like at least like all the bigger organizations, they have a lot of diversity. Like I have met people from all parts of the world. So it's actually a great experience. Like it's way better than I was expecting going into into a degree abroad and a job after that. So yeah, so actually has helped relieve a lot of my anxiety around a lot of these things. But yeah, like the only thing as an international that I do really struggle with is the paperwork and everything. But everything else, like relationships and everything, it's actually really great, at least for me personally.
Yeah, I can go next. So I totally agree with that. For the technology industry, the diversity and internationalize is way more better than other industry. That's my feeling. And I would say that so for the relationships working with coworkers, I think most of the time it is fine, it's okay, and feels good. So yeah, but definitely there is some times that maybe because of like language or cultural background, there is some kind of like misunderstandings or someone says something that I don't understand. So I would say just don't be shy and don't hesitate. Just go and ask for the second time, and eventually, and they will know your situation and they will be maybe be more patient. And also, meanwhile, you can learn like little by little, and then yeah, you'll get better. And another thing, yeah, also I agree with what has mentioned before that so as an international worker, we have like some other like paperwork or what that's called like immigration status like thing to do other than the daily work. I had some experience on, so I was working on some really high priority task, and suddenly the immigration team shooting me an email, hey, do this form, do this documentation. And yeah, so it's really like kind of like nervous to handle like those situations. But yeah, I would say like most of the managers like really, they are pretty, how to say, nice to help you out of this and give you some extra time to working on those like international worker like documents on that. Yeah, that's my experience. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again to our panelists for all of your input and just all of your feedback for our participants today. So we've gone through all the questions that we have prepared as facilitators. So now we wanted to really spend some time for audience members to ask our amazing panelists any questions that you have that you may have come up during our presentation today or even beforehand. So I'll pass it over to Vanessa to see if there's any questions that are in the chat box that we could address.
Thank you. I do see that there have been a couple questions that we've been actually getting some answers to in the chat. Thank you to Tia. And so those questions, just to summarize, were about asking about the resume, thinking back to the resume, and thinking about having a summary specific in the resume. So Tia was mentioning as an answer to that, having 1 to 3 sentences as the summary or objective is beneficial on the resume, or save space on the resume and include a cover letter, which is the same information, just a little bit more expanded than you would on the resume. And then also in regards to cover letters, is it preferred to have a shorter cover letter, more personal or more professional, and some feedback on that. Maybe cover letter around 1 page. There's examples to see different formats, typically around 2 to 4 paragraphs. And important to have the cover letters be more so than like just straight professional. Keep it kind of explaining your story and your experiences and how that's led you to apply for this specific company and the job and how that aligns with your goals. And also recommending to submit cover letters for internships in addition to full-on jobs. Tia, did you want to expand on that at all?
Not unless anyone has some follow-up questions. And sorry that I jumped in there. I think that was just habit from my company Zoom meeting.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally
Not
fine.
at all.
So I would love to hear if Karen has anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the company how much they look at cover letters, but I think if you have a really good spell-checked, proofread cover letter, it's not going to hurt you. So you want to do whatever you can to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Just to share with the attendees, don't forget our website. We have a dedicated subpage about resume and cover letter, so check out the Career Center website too for different templates and different examples. That's going to really help you out.
Yeah, and looks like Shalom has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself. That's totally fine. If you want to ask it verbally,
Yes,
happy to
please.
hear that.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't too sure, but thank you guys so much for being here and sharing your experience. I am currently I'm a junior studying undergrads, and I'm currently trying to find an internship over the summer. And I think my biggest struggle is that thinking about having the mindset of, oh, like companies will probably rather hire someone who's local than an international student. So my question to all three of the panelists is that how did you guys handle that mindset of, oh, maybe a company would just hire someone who's from local instead of, you know, going through the process of filling out so much paperwork like what you guys said earlier?
Can I start? I would recommend you definitely to apply no matter what. Like, prepare really good, but apply for sure, and don't really think, because see sometimes you do a really good interview, no matter whether it's internship or it's a proper job. Sometimes you do really good at the interview, but you don't get hired because there was someone else who was better than you, right? And things like this happen, and this is normal, and you should just do your best and kind of hope for the best. I mean, I know it's maybe not very helpful, but it should be like your mindset should be to like do the best you can and try to find a place that you want to, like, find the job that you want to do, right? And show them that, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm really passionate about this. I want to do this. And then, you know, the less you have to fake, the better, right? So if it's really driving you to be there, they'll see this, and if they legally can hire you, they will do it, and they will, you know, prioritize you over whomever, local or non-local. It doesn't really matter to them. What they care about is that you're adding value, and as long as you are, I think you're good. So good luck finding this internship. I think you should be fine.
I would just like to add that for internships especially, it doesn't really cost the company anything to hire a local versus international. You just have to do the CPT, I think. I mean, I've forgotten all this, but I think it's only the CPT, and they have to do, and I think the ISSS helps you fill out the paperwork, and then after that, the interview process is not any different for international or local. And especially like with the your skills interviews, I don't think they even ask you like if you're an international or local. That just is like something HR would handle, and you would just tell them in the beginning or in your behavioral that that's something you would need, and they will just either agree to it or say they can't do it. But yeah, in terms of like your skills and in terms of like interviewing process, it shouldn't be any different. You shouldn't be treated any differently if they're legally allowed to hire you. So yeah, I shouldn't be afraid to apply for sure.
Got
Yeah.
it. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just from the recruiter HR perspective, if a company is able and has a policy for sponsoring people on any kind of visa, then it becomes an issue of compliance. So they legally cannot give preferential treatment based off of where you're located. And there's a whole section and commission in the United States that's called Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. And so companies do have to, keep an eye on that to make sure that they're not giving certain candidates, different preferential treatment based off of location. So definitely apply. Never hurts to apply.
Got it. Thank you. It's great to know that because when I first started, I did not know the equal rights that you just mentioned, Tia. So thank you so much. I actually have a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so it's more about how did you guys? What are some specific things that you guys have done that made you stand out even more? I think this is more towards the alumni.
I can answer this. I'm one of the recruiters, but I would say that it doesn't matter necessarily what you do as long as you can tell a really good story about it. So if you can, for example, I worked at UCSC, I worked as a tour guide, and I worked as an RA. And, if you're thinking about those jobs, you may not think like, oh, this is really particularly relevant to being a recruiter. But when I was doing my interview and when I was making my resume, I talked a lot about how I really liked training and interviewing new staff members in both of those jobs, and about how that was, my biggest passion that I was doing in those jobs. I added like statistics about it to my resume. And so I really was able to craft my resume in a way that told the story of these are the jobs I did and this is what I want to do in the future. So I would say it doesn't necessarily matter what you do as long as you have an idea of what you want to do and you can kind of construct the pieces of what you've done to do that. So I think it's really helpful to do things you're really interested in and finding something that you can use moving forward.
I wanted to add a little bit about the probably this is we kind of talked about it already, but I think that company really wants to know that you kind of know what they do and you want to do this, and if you can show them the prior relevant experience you have, maybe the projects that are alike to what they develop or stuff like this. I'm probably talking more from a software developer perspective. If you have similar projects on your GitHub, you can talk about them. This is what pretty much they are looking for. Like, obviously there are good things like, publications and maybe mentions of you in a social media of your work. Stuff like this can come in handy, but if you're doing, internship and early stages of your career in general, I think just showing that, hey, these are the projects that I worked on and I think they relate to what you do and I'm really into it and I'm willing to learn more. This is what they want to see, I think.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say another perspective on basically what both Karen and Anton just said is that when you're interviewing, you're basically building a business case to the employer to say, this is why you should hire me for this particular position. So that's why it's important to tell that story, connect it to what the team is currently looking for, and just, give them pieces of evidence to show and prove, I can be successful, I'm interested, and this position is in line with my larger goals.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So I know that we're slowly closing down to the 1:30 mark. So I want to make sure that we honor everyone's time. So we all have very, very busy lives right now. So we do want to do a quick wrap up with our panelists today. If there's any, last minute closing thoughts you wanted to share with the audience today, maybe like a few words of encouragement or one last tip that you wanted to share before we end today.
Yeah, I probably did talk a little bit about, like maintaining your mental health. it didn't seem like a big issue to me back in college, but I think that it's more and more important. At least I see a lot of my friends, the people I studied with, you know, like running into problems with this right now, and I think that it's really important to take care of that. I mentioned, you know, like find things that help you relieve the stress, because especially the job search in terms of if you're an international student and your clock is ticking, you know, you have to stay employed. If you lose a job, it's because for me, like I think my contract ended at some point because there was no more projects in a company to put me on. They kind of had to let me go, and I was like, yo, I have a month of, you know, unemployment left, and I have to find something real quick. This puts a lot of stress on you, and yeah, it's really, I think it's even more important to take care of your mental health and take care of your career, because I think even if you land a good job, your career can be very short if you're, you know. So I think that yeah, this is just something I would mention to myself, or like send a letter to me in the past. Yeah.
Thank you, Anton.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I would just say you should be really flexible. I think a lot of people, you know, come into college and they say, I want to work at this company and I want to do this job. But you have your whole career for that. Like, you're going to be working in the industry for a long time. And it's so much easier to get a job after your first job that, you know, if you don't like your first job or you do it for a year, you can really use the skills that you learned in that first job and the folks that you've met to, you know, move to your next job and find something that, you know, may be more in line with your long-term goal. So I think being really flexible and being able to, you know, maybe apply to jobs that may not have been your first choice when you started applying, but you're still really interested in, I think is a good thing to remember.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, totally agree that every position you have is a stepping stone to the next one. And you know, you never know who you're going to connect with. You never know who's going to help you get to that next stage or that next job. And also, you know, just to double down on what Anton said, that mental health piece is huge. My partner went through a similar situation where he was on a work visa, and then something happened with his job, and then it's really stressful. And then on top of that, you know, interviewing in a language that maybe isn't your native language. You know, there are just so many, you know, things that you have to overcome to get to this. But that's not to say that you can't do it. You know, I think everybody who's on this panel is a great example of that it's possible. And, you know, again, this is a weird year. I saw Rishi post in the chat, you know, what about the pandemic and how that's affected the job market. And, you know, I think what has happened is, you know, a lot of companies have slowed down hiring. So that makes it more competitive for those more junior level positions. But I think the fact that, you know, you have a lot of really great advice coming out of this workshop that will help you stand out, that will help you, you know, get through the process and get to, you know, that first job that maybe isn't your favorite or, you know, what you had in mind. But it's definitely a start. So I think my closing thought is stay resilient, stay strong, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, tap into your networks, tap your friends and your resources, and best of luck. And again, I'm available for resume reviews if you need it.
Thanks so much, Tia, and thank you, Karen.
I can share some like closing thoughts, I think. So I want to say that like a job market is essentially a market. So that means there's not only one buyer. So yeah, so just don't just like, so even if you like a failed like interview, just the only thing you should take away from that is experience or lessons. No frustrations take away from that. So yeah, and the other side of like, it's not only one buyer, is just apply as much as possible, because you don't know like which company or which team or group will specifically interested in your resume and your experience. So that is pretty, I would say, it's like by chance or maybe, but it's not really by chance. It's like your experience just like put into a pool and matching some position. And to be honest, like my current job is not what I'm looking for. I mean, there's someone like reaching out to me, and then I found out that, okay, this team is just like matching what I've been doing before, and I don't even know how he got to me. So yeah, so just like to put your things, put your resumes, your keywords on the LinkedIn, and there will be bigger chance like another like buyer will like buy you. Yeah. Thanks.
That's a good way to look at it. Thank you, Zixiang.
Yeah, I just want to say I totally agree with that too. My current job is also not what I applied for, but I ended up in, and I love it. So I would also just reiterate on saying that just focus on the learning and the experience, and just want to wish everyone good luck. And if anyone has any specific questions and wants to reach out, I would be happy to answer them later on too. Thanks.
Thank you, Bhumika. Thank you so much to everyone. And I just want to give a quick virtual round of applause for all of our amazing panelists today for just taking the time out to graciously speak with all of our participants today and really helping them, pump them up, help them with their job search journeys as all of us are doing. And just thank you so much for your time today and joining us. So to wrap up, we do want to leave you with a couple of resources for all of our participants for our different offices that you can reach us and contact us at.
So I'll just give some information about global engagement. It's where Andy and I are both coming from. Please contact us and ask for ISSS advising, especially these questions that are about documentation and CPT and OPT. This is exactly the full reason why we're here, is to help alleviate these issues and help make sure you understand them and get the authorization that you need. So please reach out to us. We're happy to meet with you. You can start with this contact information from our landing page from Global Engagement, and we would love to meet with you. So just a little plug for Global Engagement. And Yang?
Yeah, Career Success. Don't forget, you have the Career Center website. So check out our website. We offer a wide array of career services to for you, and there's a ton of I would say resources too for you to explore. Right. So start there, and equally important, be sure to check out our events calendar. Every quarter we put on a number of events and workshops, webinars. So check out our events calendar that you might find several that are of interest to you. So start there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, with that, we thank you again for coming today. And we certainly wish you all a happy holiday season this year. Continue to be safe, stay well and healthy and prosperous for you and your family members. And please have a great rest of your day. Good night if you're late at night, and good morning, going to the afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very helpful. I learned
Thanks
a lot.
everybody for joining.
Thank you very